Cool. All right. So, hey, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Deena. I'm the account manager for West Virginia U. So I work for Western IRB, and I have the whole state of West Virginia, actually, that I work with. Primarily, I actually work with the middle of the country, so Dakotas, Iowa, Minnesota, and so on. But it is my pleasure to be working with West Virginia University. I'm mixing up Western IRB, and it's a Friday, so. In any case, we will jump right in. The main agenda that we have today is we're going to go, first I'll give you a quick overview of WCG and WIRB. Some of you folks in the room, I'm not sure how many of you work with clinical trials, or if you're planning to submit to us anytime soon, or if you've submitted anything to an IRB before. I'll give you a quick overview of our company. We'll talk about the submission process for WIRB. So mainly we're going to walk through the initial review submission form. We have a few other smart forms that we'll take a quick look at the end of the presentation, but the primary part of this presentation is just to go over how to submit initially and things that you need to know. I'll do a quick Connexus demonstration. So Connexus is our submission portal. This is what you're going to use to send in your submissions. And then finally, a note on the new common rule. There was a new common rule implemented in January. We just updated our forms at the beginning of this year to accommodate for that. For you folks that are not working with any federally funded research, this would not really apply, but it's important to note since we did just update some of our forms for that purpose. All right. So let's start with an overview of Western IRB and of WIRB Copernicus Group. So Western Institutional Review Board is part of a larger entity called WCG, which stands for WIRB Copernicus Group. So WCG owns 26 plus companies around the globe. So we have a bunch of companies domestically, and we have a few internationally as well. Now, we started in 2012 as just an IRB services group. So it started with just Western IRB, which is, we've been around for over 50 years, and Copernicus Group, which they have a lot of good relationships with sponsors. They've been working with sponsors for many years. They celebrated their 20th anniversary in 2016. So we started by partnering together just to enhance IRB services, and we acquired IRB Net. So that's a submission portal that helps facilitate submissions to local IRBs. I actually worked for IRB Net for my first 4 years at WCG. So we started just as that, and now we've grown to really more of a clinical services organization. So I've put up some of our logos here, but each of our companies, the point of us all working together is to help decrease the time it takes to get new devices and drugs to market. And we really each company attacks a different pain point in the clinical research process. So we're all united under one goal. And West Virginia U has a master services agreement with Western IRB. And so we have reviewed several studies for you all that are industry sponsored and so on. So with some background about WIRB, we have a lot of regulatory experience here. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. We have senior advisors to FDA, OHARP, AHARP. We have a long AHARP accreditation history. We have 5 panels that each meet twice a week, and we have a lot of CIPs on our staff. So the point of me telling you all this is if you all run into as part of your contract with WIRB, if you run into any kind of regulatory situation, some kind of unusual situation, you're not really sure what to do about it, you can email me or client services, but I'm your point of contact, so you're welcome to just email me directly, and we can get you the appropriate regulatory expert to help you with your issue, even if it's not a WIRB study. So just keep that in your back pocket. We are a resource, and we're here to help you. So now we'll get into the main part of our presentation here where we're going to walk through the initial review submission form. So what I'm going to do, the way this is going to work, is I'm just going to go over some higher level items of what to expect and what to really focus on. Then we'll actually take a look at the form, and so we can review what we talked about. You can kind of see what the actual form looks like. So if you're approached you have an investigator that's, a sponsor has approached you to say, hey, we want you to participate in this study. The first step that you should do if you have a new study on your hands is contact me or client services and provide us with the sponsor protocol number. And what we'll do is we'll check to make sure that we have it on file. So even if WIRB isn't the central IRB on the study, then other sites may have submitted to us already for review. So we might already have reviewed the protocol and all of the study level items for these other sites that have submitted to us. So double check with me or client services to make sure that we have it on file. And what this will do is this will reduce the amount of work that you need to do later. Because the way our forms work is that you're only required to fill out the information that applies to you. So filling out something just for your site is going to take up a lot less time than filling out something for the entire study as a whole. So if we do have it on file, if we've already reviewed it, then we'll provide you with access in our submission portal, Connexus, and WIRB approved ICF templates for the study. This is also a great shortcut because then all you need to do is just redline your site-specific information into the already approved template from WIRB. Now, the last bullet point here, if we do have it on file, is I always recommend that you ask me or client services if the study falls under what we call the single review solution. Now I'm going to go back a couple of slides just to get back to this set of logos here. So if you recall, we were talking about how our company started with WIRB and Copernicus Group joining forces. Part of those efforts were translated into what we call single review solution option for review. So what this means is that the sponsor would designate Copernicus Group IRB, usually, as the central IRB on the study, and Copernicus would review all of the study level items like the protocol, so on. And then WIRB would review any of the institutional sites that are on file for the study. And this is usually for a larger multi-site industry-sponsored trial. The reason why this is so helpful is because the sponsor can continue to work with Copernicus as the expert on working with sponsors and on protocol level review, while WIRB can work with all of the institutions that we have agreements with, and we can comply with your rules. Now, part of WIRB's appeal to institutions is that we can flex to your requirements. So with West Virginia University, one of those requirements is a sign-off. You guys also have required ICF language on file that we have here with us that our staff put into consent forms or double check to make sure that the required language is in there. So the benefit of using both IRBs is that the sponsor's happy. They can work with Copernicus as the expert, and then you all as the site can have me as your point of contact if there's any escalated issues, and all of your local WVU rules are being double checked from our end to make sure they're being followed. So if you ask whether the study falls under single review solution, this is just helpful knowledge for you to have, because while we do our best to educate our sponsors and our CRO contacts on this process, there might be turnover at sponsor companies, at CRO companies, and so on, and they might not be as familiar with the single review solution option, and they might be asking you to submit to Copernicus Group IRB, which you would not do. You would still submit to WIRB even if Copernicus is the central. So just make sure to double check. If you ever get any pushback from your sponsor contact, if they're not really sure what's going on, and if you need help, you can always email me or client services, and we're happy to assist you. So now that I've gone through that spiel, if we do not have the study on file, if we've never seen it before, then that would be the case where you would need to gather all the protocol level documents and site level documents for submission. All right. So the next step is to download the initial review submission form. So they are available in two places. They are in our submission portal, Connexus. That's what you're seeing down here under the quick access links menu. My recommendation is to just go to werb.com and find our forms from there. It's going to automatically take me to the download forms page because I have it bookmarked, but I'll show you actually where it is on the menu. My computer's a little slow this morning, so my apologies. But when you go to the website, there's a menu at the top that says download forms, and then you'll be able to download all of our forms from there. Perfect. Okay, so this is our, if you're on the home page, you can go home. So this is the download forms section. So it's this link at the top. I'll just maximize this for everybody's reference. So if we scroll down, this is where all of our forms are. Our guide for researchers is really helpful if you need a specific question answered that you might be able to reference from there. All of our forms are smart forms. So when you download them, just be sure to right click on where it says Smart PDF and hit Save Link As, and that's how you're going to download it. If you just try to open it in Chrome, it's not going to work because it is a Smart PDF. So just make sure that you download it and open it in Adobe. Okay, so once you have the form open, you're going to start filling out the form in accordance with what applies to your study. Now I'm going to go over these higher level items that you're going to you just want to make sure that you note. So the first step, of course, is that you're going to direct your submission to Western IRB. You'll see some of our other IRBs here. We do have 6 IRBs. So just be sure to select Western IRB. It's at the bottom of the list here. Then there's 2 common options for submitting. If we already have the study on file, you'll select Site being added to existing protocol or change of PI. If we've never seen the study before, it would be new protocol and PI, which is the combined submission. If you're working with any of these other types of submissions, we have other forms available for that. For site contacts, there's a little question that says contacts, so you'll hit yes. And this is where you'll add folks like study coordinators, sponsor contacts, and CRO contacts. So just make sure you put their information in here. And the really important part that I want to notify you all of is down below these 2 checkboxes here. So this one says copy this person on IRB correspondence. You'll definitely want to check that off if the person you're adding is a study coordinator, just so that if there's any clarification needed when you send in a submission, if there are any holds, or any other reason that we need to contact you, that you check that off so we know that we can contact you and that you get all of the notices that are involved in IRB correspondence. The second box here is for continuing review forms. So when the study is coming up for continuing review, we automatically send the continuing review report form to the person who's selected on this form. You can select multiple people, but if you don't select anyone, it's going to default to the PI, which isn't always ideal. So just be sure to select the appropriate person to get continuing review forms. And then there's a little checkbox here to add another contact, or excuse me, a plus sign, not a checkbox. For research locations, just be sure to input every location that research will be occurring at. If you know that the location is engaged in research, you need to include the address here. Make sure it's accurate. If it's not accurate and we approve it and then we have to, correct it, that would be a change in research. So just be sure that the location is listed in here correctly. One question that I get fairly, or on occasion, is if you need to put like a floor number or a room number when you're putting in these addresses. I don't recommend doing that just because every time you have to change it, it would be a change in research. So in case you might need to move around rooms in the same building, I would not include the room number or the floor number. These are just a few examples of other questions that we have on the form. These are smart forms that we're working with. So depending on how you answer questions will determine if additional forms are needed or if you need to answer with a little more detail on the question. If you say no, it'll just move you on to the next question. For institutional services, you're always going to answer yes to this question. This is because WVU does have an agreement with us. So we have the institution ID here, which would be input right here where it says WIRB institution number. So if you want to jot this down, it's 99059. And what this does is it tells our login staff, this is coming from West Virginia U, and all of the West Virginia U rules that we have on file must be applied. Now for certificates of training, WIRB does not require you to send over certificates of training. We just require that you answer yes to this question, which says all the study staff have the appropriate training as needed to be part of the study. You don't need to have all of these training, these different types of training completed. You just need to have the ones that are applicable. You can kind of think of this form as a contract. So by saying yes, you're attesting that yes, the appropriate people have the appropriate training. And that's really how the whole form goes, is that when you're filling it out, you're filling it out with accurate information, and you're not sending us anything that's not accurate. Now here's an example of a question where if you answer yes, it will ask you to complete a supplemental form. So you'll see there's a little hazard sign right there. So that'll notify you just immediately, hey, you're gonna have to fill out an additional form. What we also have at the very end of the form is a list of required documents that you will need to complete or fill out and have as part of your document package when you're sending stuff to us. Now, if you're submitting a consent form, normally you'll answer the consent form processing question as follows. Now, this is important to note. You are going to say yes to does your organization have pre-approved consent language on file with the IRB, because we do have agreed upon language with WVU. However, some of that language will only be included or checked for if it applies for your study. If you need a copy of this, I know Sarah Stetler has a copy of the approved template information. So if you are wondering what the required language is, she can be of help to you for that. I also have a copy if you need it. But because there are some parts of the language that have to be submitted in order for us to check for it and make sure that it's accurate, you would select that the IRB should review the attached consent forms that have the pre-approved consent language tracked into the IRB approved template. If you remember, when you first ask for if we have the study on file, if we do, we will provide you with that IRB approved template. So all you need to do is just redline any required language right into that redlined, right into that approved template. At the very end of the form, you'll be able to reference a list of required submission documents. So it'll include whatever attachments are required, as well as whatever is required based on how you answered previous questions in the form. One thing to note is if we already have a CV on file for a PI, you don't need to submit it every single time that you send in a new study for that same PI. We just need to make sure that it's up to date. So if they have a new one, then you can submit it. But if you submit it for Dr. Smith a month ago, and then you have another study that you have to submit for Dr. Smith, we already have it on file. You don't need to submit it that second time. At the very end of the form, we also have a nifty checkbox, so you can check to make sure that you completed all of the required fields. So if you hit check, it'll outline all of the unanswered questions that you need to answer in a big red dotted line for your reference. Now, the other piece of, after you've completed that initial submission form, you want to make sure that you have complied with your local requirements. So you need to obtain your 10-digit IRB protocol number by creating the project within WVU's internal system. So you're going to include this number in the special instructions portion of the initial submission form. And I'll show you where that is in just a minute. So I'm actually going to stop here and open up that form so that we can take a look at it and just review what we talked about. I'm going to zoom in really big so everybody can see. So this is our initial review submission form. So we'll actually take a look at it so you can see what it looks like. So first step, of course, is you have to select Western IRB as the destination IRB. And then submission type, we're going to select site being added to existing protocol. So as you scroll down, you'll see, okay, this is where you put in the protocol information. You can put in if the research is federally funded and so on. I'm just scrolling through here so you can get an idea of what it looks like. This is where you put in the PI info. And then there's a section for contacts. So this is where you would add, if you're a study coordinator, you'd add yourself. So hit yes. Study coordinator, and this is where you would fill it out. Again, you want to be sure you're going to check yourself off. If you're the study coordinator, copy this person on IRB correspondence and send continuing review forms to this person to be filled out and returned to the IRB. And then you can add more contacts by clicking here. There's that translated documents question. So this is just an example of a question where if you answer it yes, then you need to submit a subsequent form. And there's that little hazard sign there. So I'm going to say no, and then that will go away. So for billing information, this is a question I get a lot. So if we already have the study on file, normally you're going to just say, use the billing information provided by the sponsor or CRO. So we want to make sure we're sending bills to the right place for the study. Usually that's the sponsor. We have some questions about vulnerable populations and so on. And there's that institutional services question. So this is where you would put yes, you would put WVU, and then I believe it's 99059 that you would put there. We have some questions about the PI, if there's some administrative actions. I know I'm scrolling through a little fast, but I just want to go over these higher level items. This is where you'd put in the research location. So just make sure that that's accurate. And this is where we gather some information about the study team, and then this is the research team training question. So yes, they do have the appropriate training. Now let's get to that consent question. So if subjects will provide informed consent, you'd say yes, and then this is where you'd put in all of that consent info. And then we have a consent documentation question. So if they're signing a written consent form, you'd hit yes, and then that gets you to that question we went over earlier. So you do have language on file, and you're going to be redlining it into the IRB approved template. Ask a few more questions about the process, and then it gets into confidentiality. And finally, we have the special instructions box. So this is where you would put your WVU 10-digit IRB number, whatever that may be. Okay, so let's scroll down. We have an acknowledgement. So again, this is kind of like a contract. You're confirming that all the information is correct. You say this is the person completing the form. And then this is the checkbox for completeness. So if I hit this, it's going to say there are 78 required entries missing that are outlined above. And I would have to go back and fill all those out and so on. Okay. So now that you have filled out the form, you have sign off, you have your red line consent, everything's all ready. You are 95% of the way there. The last step is just to submit through our portal, which is called Connexus. So you'll create a new account or log in if you have an existing account. And I can provide the link. I know Sarah has it, but I can provide it if needed. Okay. So when you're submitting, we will have already added you to the study workspace. At the very beginning, not only did you get the IRB approved consent forms and everything else, but you also got access to the workspace to submit a new PI. So you'll click on My Studies in Connexus, and then click on Submit New Investigator over on the right-hand side menu. And then the last step is to just upload documents and submit. In submission name, you can put like initial review, and then fill out the rest of it, and then just upload the documents and submit. And that's all you would need to do for that. Now, if you have a brand new protocol, something we have not seen before, this is not a new PI on an existing study, at the top you would click Make Submission, and then click on Initial Review Submission and Review of a New Research Protocol. And it's the same process. Just upload the documents and submit all of those documents that you've already gathered together. So I'm just going to show you really quick. We're going to log into, this is Connexus. So the link is connexus.wcgclinical.com. So I'm going to log into a test account here so that we can see what it looks like. So we're logged in. This is what our submission portal looks like. We have a dashboard up here. Now, when you're submitting a new PI for an existing study, you'll go to My Studies over on this side of the page. This is where you'll have all the studies that you have access to. So let's just click on this one here. And then over on the right-hand side menu, you would click on Submit New Investigator. From here, you'd fill out everything. Yes, you are with an institution, and the submission type is Initial Review. Save and continue. So we're going to have required documents here. So you'll have the CV and the submission form. And then there's a checkbox to upload optional documents like your consent form. Now, if you have a brand new study we've never seen before, you'll go to Make Submission at the top of the page. And there's that Initial Review Submission that you would click, and then Review of a New Research Protocol. Then it would bring you to a similar page. You just want to make sure you route it to WRB. All right. I'm going to move that back over, and we'll talk about what happens after you submit. So you'll get an automated email saying you have submitted this to WRB, and we'll start to prepare the submission. You can think of the process as an assembly line. So it starts out with our login staff. So they're the folks that are just checking the submission for completeness, and they're logging that it's a WVU study. So again, that institution number that you put in that form just helps them identify quickly that it's a WVU study. So they're going to log it in and make sure it's complete. That is all the required documents. Then it goes to our pre-panel team. That's the next step. Our pre-board team is mainly focusing on preparing the consents for board review. So if you do have language that you've tracked into the consent that is with your, it has your local language and so on, they're just double checking to make sure that there's no deviations to that language, and they're getting the consents all prepared for board review. Then it goes to either convened meeting or it goes to an expedited reviewer. We have a whole team of expedited reviewers that are reviewing submissions. And then once it's approved, it goes to our post-board team. So our post-board team is making sure that all the documents are stamped and that everything is accurate. The certificate of action, which is our approval letter, has all of the appropriate info. And then finally, they transmit the documents back to you through Connexus. So you'll get those outcome documents right there in the portal. Now, our certificate of action is our approval letter, but it's also a letter it's the same letter for any action that we take. So no matter what action you're taking, it's going to be it's going to be the same format. So it'll have some basic info on the submission. It'll have all the research locations and who the letter was sent to. Now, there's two things that we should note about adding more people to your study. If you just need people if you have study team members or folks that are just needing access to outcome documents, or you need backups, you can add those people in Connexus directly without contacting WRB. So that's something that you can manage right there from your own pretty instantaneously. Now, if you need to add additional people to receive continuing review forms or all official IRB correspondence and not just have access in Connexus, that would require an additional form. So let me show you in Connexus where you can add more people. So we're back here at Connexus. We'll go to My Investigators, and this is going to be your main landing page after you start sending in more submissions. So let's click on one of these investigators here. And this is where you would manage access. So the menus on the right-hand side are really helpful. The manage access to this investigator link will allow you to add in someone's email address. You can say they represent the PI or the site admin staff. And then this part is where you can add their access. So if they only need access to outcome documents, you would add list only. Submitter will allow them to make submissions for that investigator. So amendments, changes in research, continuing review. And manager will allow them to do both of those things and also access this page here to add more people to have access to this investigator. So this contact information update form would be necessary if the access they need goes beyond just being able to look at outcome documents in Connexus. So if they need to be, if they're replacing a study coordinator on multiple studies, you would use this form. This is on our website, so if you need it, you can access it from there. It's just a Word document. It's not a smart PDF. And then this is a quick overview of what we just looked at. So if you need to manage access for the workspace, you would click that. All approval documents are displayed for that investigator. So I'm going to come back here. So if this person had approval documents, they would appear down here. And if you needed to make subsequent submissions for this investigator, you would use make submission for this investigator. Something else just to note, if you're taking over for a study coordinator that left, if you want to look at historic submissions or historical submissions for this study, or for this investigator rather, you would do view submissions for this investigator, and then submitted since any time, and then you can see all previous submissions made for this investigator. All right. Just to quickly look at our other forms, we do have mainly Smart PDF. So when you have a change in research, you would download our change in research form. You are submitting as a site, and then you would fill out whatever change that you need to make for that study. This is an important one, so I get questions on this a lot. The promptly reportable information form is when some kind of event, maybe an unanticipated problem or adverse event occurs and you need to report it, or an event occurs that the sponsor is telling you to report, then you would use this form. Our reporting requirements are on our guide for researchers, and the list of problems that we require you report are also on this promptly reportable information form. So you can see the list starts down here. Now for these, when we receive them, if it doesn't constitute increased risk to subjects and we determine that no further action is required, there will be no acknowledgement letter or anything like that. It's really like a no news is good news type situation. If we do need to take further action, then we'll let you know. You'll get a regulatory letter and so on. We would actually formally review the information that you sent in. On occasion, sponsors ask for some kind of acknowledgement that we received it and that we filed it without action. If you do need that, just email me and I'll send you an email saying that we filed it without action. And then finally, we have our continuing review report form. So this form will actually be emailed to you automatically, or it'll be emailed to the people who were selected on the initial review form to receive these. And the above information will be filled in for you, so the sponsor name and everything like that will be filled in for you automatically. This form isn't on our website, so if you go looking for it, you're not going to be able to find it. And this is just a list of common tasks in Connexus. As a quick note, it's just a submission portal. It's not really a regulatory binder or anything like that. So if you have any questions on it, there is live support. And you know, if you need anything urgent, just let me know. So we're almost at the end here. I just wanted to give a quick note about the new common rule that was just implemented. So we will only review federally funded protocols under the new regulations unless requested otherwise. So if you're not working with any federally funded studies, this information wouldn't apply to you. But if you are if you do have a federally funded study and you need help on getting together a required consent summary that's at the beginning of every consent form, we do have a template on our website. So you can go look. You don't need to write down this link, but it is on our website. So you can just take a look, and you know, if you have any questions on that, just let me know. So that's it. I know I went over quite a bit of information, really just higher level stuff. So when it comes time for you to actually submit, if you need any help, I'm here for your questions. And at this point, I'll open it up to questions from you guys.
For anybody that's on the phone that may not have access to a mic, if you want to put it in the chat, we can see it. You just send it to everybody if you don't mind. Any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
If you're submitting a study and you're not sure that the PI has already got a CV on file, is there a place that you can look and see if they're?
Yeah, you can just email me about it if you have a question. If you know that if the PI's been approved for a study at WIRB, then it means we have his or her CV on file. But if you're not sure, you can just email me or client services, and we can let you know. There would also be, in Connexus, there's a way to view past submissions for a PI. So if you have access to their workspace in Connexus, so you're shared on this investigator, this page is actually where you would look. So I'll just show you where that is again. Let me start from the very beginning. So you would go to My Investigators. Assuming that you're shared on this investigator, you would click on them and then click on View Submissions for this investigator. And you can see, you know, okay, submitted since any time, and you can look to see, was the CV included in this submission? So if I click on that tracking number, it would include the documents that were submitted.
Your email.
Do you guys, I'm sorry, I didn't include it. Let me get a, so my email is D as in David, HOROWITZ @WIRB.com. So you can email me if you need that. And and client services, I'll just open this up because their contact information is on the site too. So if you're not sure where to go, there's Contact Us. And client services @WIRB.com. Sarah Stutler also has my contact info. So if you need anything and you lost my contact info, you can ask Sarah and she'll give it to you.
Actually, I'll be sending out after this. I'll send out a survey. I can send that with that if that's okay, Deena. So
oh, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
I wrote that down as actions. I'll do that.
Yeah, and you have my phone number as well. So if you want to include that, that's fine.
Okay, I will write that down. Any other questions? Right. Well, Deena, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming.